Hello FPL managers and welcome back to another video from myself, Will, and fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. There's been quite a few changes to my latest draft, so I thought I'd do a new video detailing those changes, explaining why I've made them, those players that are locked in and those players that could still change before the deadline. Let's get into it. Before we do jump into the main video, I wanted to say a massive thank you to the thousands and thousands of you that have been signing up to Fantasy Football Hub membership and taking advantage of our 25% off offer. If you're not already signed up, then what are you waiting for? You can get access to everything you need to dominate those mini leagues this season, all in one easily accessible place. That includes our incredibly intuitive Opta-Data tool. I use that every single week. It's so useful. WhatsApp groups, these things are so popular. We're actually considering having to limit the number of WhatsApp groups just because they are just so popular and people are absolutely loving them. New Rate My Team tool that should be coming potentially today, potentially tomorrow. Very excited to share that with our members. Ridiculously powerful points projection tool, full access to our incredible mobile app. Team reveals from the very best fantasy football players around, revealing their team, not just their team, but their strategies and their thought process each and every week. Player comparison tool, so useful. Fixture Analyzer, we've recently done a big upgrade to that. Loads of member articles. Ben Crellin's incredible planner exclusive to Fantasy Football Hub. If you want to get access to Ben's planner, you do need to be a Fantasy Football Hub member. Our Slack channel, our 5K League, which will be released tomorrow for those asking about it, and a lot more. So if you are interested in signing up and you haven't already, I'll leave a link in the description and in the information card above. Okay, so here it is in its glory. As I said in the introduction, I'm going to go through the team and I'm going to explain, those players which are completely locked in and those players which have the potential to be changed out. I have to admit that I have been changing my draft on a fairly regular basis, and this is the latest one. So there could very well be changes before the deadline. In fact, I expect there will be changes towards the deadline. Having said that, though, I am quite liking this team at the moment. And, I'm liking a lot of the picks in it. So starting between the sticks then, I've gone for Backman. I switched over from Melia, who I had in my last draft, mainly just because of the 0.5 saving. I do still really like Melia, though. I think that he's going to be a bonus point magnet this season, especially with Dallas moved into midfield. Leeds have a little bit of tricky opening fixtures, and Watford have some really good opening fixtures, and I can save that 0.5, which is the only really reason that I've gone for Backman. The other reason I do like Backman, though, is that Foster is a 4.0 backup, which gives me a little bit of confidence, especially because, what's happened with Henderson at United going down with COVID. I do still like Henderson as an option as well, coming in at 5.0. I think that he's potentially offers good value for a United keeper. But Backman, Watford had a pretty good defensive record in the Championship. I think they had the best defensive record, actually, if memory serves correctly. Plus, they've got some really tasty opening fixtures. Now, I think if Watford can keep a clean sheet, then Backman is likely to get a lot of saves in that game, and he's likely to get a lot of bonus. So, he's not just going to come away with 6 points. He could potentially come away with 8, 9, even double-figure points, which is why I kind of favour him over someone like Sanchez. Yes, I expect Brighton to get more clean sheets. Yes, they're a better defensive asset. But Sanchez makes very few saves. He's, if Brighton keep a clean sheet, he'll probably get 6 points. He might get 7, which is great. For a 4.5 million keeper, 6 or 7 points is fantastic. So I still think that he's a really strong option. But I think there's, a slightly higher ceiling with Backman, which is why he's currently in my squad. Although, again, he's a player which is, far from nailed down. I think there's quite a few different keeper options, which I like. Moving on to the defence, I'm not going to talk about Trent. He is one of those players which is completely locked into my team. Sure, he's fairly locked into my team. I was actually looking a little at the data from last season, and, Wan-Bissaka outscored him for points per game last season by quite a distance, actually, which kind of made me think, should I include Wan-Bissaka? I even looked at the second half of last season because I know that Shaw, had a better second half of the season. Wan-Bissaka still outperformed Shaw over the second half of the season in terms of their points per game. One thing that was in Shaw's favour was the expected underlying data. And, looking back at it, I think that Wan-Bissaka was probably fairly fortunate to get some of the assists that he did get. And I just think, from the eye test, from the Euros, from watching Manchester United, I do think that Shaw is probably going to be the better asset. Diaz is an interesting one, and a player that had a lot last season and did very well for me. I'm going to flip over to the Fantasy Football Hub Fixture Ticker to explain why I've gone for the Manchester City defender. Okay, so this is the Fantasy Football Hub Fixture Ticker. Now, if you recently joined the Fantasy Football Hub, you'll be able to use this advanced tab and you'll be able to look at predicted results, which I think is a really unique feature. I don't know any other ticker that does this, but it is very useful. So as you can see, if you look at the predicted results and you look at the defense, what this does is effectively predicts the amount of clean sheets that each team will get over the first 6 game weeks. Now, as you can see, Manchester City are actually top of this, despite looking at their fixture and thinking, yeah, they've got Tottenham, Arsenal, Leeds and Chelsea in the first 6, which is pretty tough fixture run, to be fair. Because they are Manchester City, they're still predicted to get the most clean sheets, which I think is a really important thing to remember. And it kind of makes sense, if they're going to play against Tottenham, I'm probably going to expect them to get a clean sheet. Norwich, probably going to expect them to get a clean sheet. Arsenal, potentially expect them to get a clean sheet in that one as well. So, you're looking at the first 3 games and you might think, playing Tottenham and Arsenal, potentially tricky. I think that Manchester City could keep clean sheets in all 3 of those games. So that's kind of why I've gone Diaz. I do actually really like Cancelo as well. Obviously, there is a slight doubt about his game time, but I'm very much on the fence whether I want to go with Diaz, whether I want to go with Cancelo. I think both of those are really strong options. In the current draft I've got at the moment, I don't have a good backup really on the bench. So that's kind of why I've gone with Diaz and not Cancelo. I think if I had a better bench, then I probably would actually go Cancelo over Diaz, because I think that he offers, considerably more attacking threat. And, going into that Norwich game, for example, I think that, he has the potential to score a double-digit return, which, when players have that type of potential, I think that we should probably look to jump on them. Luca Dean, he's been in a couple of my drafts. I'm not going to talk too much about him. I think he's a very solid option. Certainly not nailed down in my team. I think there are a lot of good defenders around this price point. The likes of Cresswell, the likes of Soufal. Go a little bit more expensive to Chilwell, Diaz, Cancelo. Go a little bit cheaper to the likes of Veltman, Ayling. There are a lot of good defensive options. I'm sure there's a lot of them that I've missed out in that list there. But I think that, Luca Dean, they've got good fixtures. He's hopefully going to be fairly attacking. He's going to be on set pieces. He's got, multiple routes to scoring points, which I like. Moving on to midfield, Fernandes and Salah, absolute locks in my team. They're going absolutely nowhere. I know some people are a little bit more unsure about Fernandes, but for me, yeah, he's, the highest scoring player last season. United have got good fixtures. Let's just keep things simple and not overthink the situation. Fernandes is a complete lock. I've gone with Diego Jota in this draft, and I do like him as an option. Now, if I was going to pick 3 Liverpool players in isolation, I would probably actually go for Robertson, Trent and Salah as my 3 preferred Liverpool options. But of course, we're not picking players in isolation. We've got to create a team. And for me, I think there are a lot of good defensive options which offer a lot of value. And there are less good midfield options, certainly around Jota's price point, that I'm that convinced to start the season with. Jota, yes, his game time is not guaranteed. Klopp is going to play probably 3 out of, Firmino, Mane, Salah and Jota, and he's probably the ones that are most likely to get rotated will be Jota and Firmino. Yes, they've sometimes played in a 4, but I think that's slightly unlikely. So there's definitely a risk with going with Jota. But, there's a lot of risk around that sort of price point. And the other players I am considering, Havertz for a little bit more, maybe one of the Manchester City guys. But there's risk around all of those guys as well. And Jota playing Norwich in Gameweek 1, I quite like him, and I think he's probably underpriced a little bit as well. Only 7.5. I also like having a midfielder slot at that price point because it's not too difficult to get to a Grealish or to get to a Foden or to get to a Havertz. If one of these players begins to bang, or potentially, if all goes well, Jota will be the one that bangs, right? So originally I went for Fernandes, Salah, Rafinha and Buendia in midfield, but it just doesn't give you enough flexibility. You're never going to nail your game with one side, right? So what you want it set up for is to be flexible, to jump on the players that are going to start the season well. And, having players at different price points, it's not the be and end all, but I think it is very important, especially for Game Week 1. Rafinha is also in there. I think he's been in every one of these team reveals drafts that I've done, but he's actually not a lock in my team. Leeds do have some tricky opening fixtures, and I'm not completely set on him, but I do think that he does offer some great value. And from Game Week 5, Leeds fixtures open up a little bit, so he's one of those players that I can just leave in. and you know, I don't need to make a transfer later down the line, which I do think is important. Moving on to the Strikeforce, as I mentioned in my forwards video, I'm pretty set on Antonio. You know, I think that West Ham have great fixtures. I think that he has the potential to be a very, very explosive pick early doors. Yes, I know he's a bit injury prone, and yes, I know that comes with a little bit of a risk, but I think the risk is certainly worth taking with Antonio, because he could make a mockery of that 7.5 million price tag. As I said, we want to monitor the situation of whether West Ham buy another forward. That could disrupt things a little bit, but at the time of recording, I think Antonio is a fantastic option. Danny Ings, obviously listed as a Southampton player there. As of yesterday, he has officially gone to Aston Villa, and as we know, Aston Villa have 3 ridiculously tasty early fixtures early doors. Watkins was in my team, but you know, he's likely to be shifted out wide, and I think that Ings is going to be spearheading that Aston Villa attack over the first 3 game weeks, likely on penalties. And you know, I think that he's just a class player. He's going to want to make an impact when he comes in, and he's got the fixtures to do it. So for me, at 8 million, I think that, you know, coming into that Aston Villa side that have got just, I know they've lost Grealish, but they have brought in quite a bit of creativity. You know, in Bailey, in Buendia. The other thing that I like about Ings that I've obviously mentioned again in this video is his price point, and you know, you're able to switch to someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin or downgrade to, you know, the plethora of 7.5 million forwards, or even downgrade to Tony. He's a really nice price point, which, you know, allows a lot of flexibility in your squad. On the bench, to be honest, I haven't given a whole lot of thought to it. You know, Brownhill, Williams and Davies, obviously not a particularly strong bench, and something that I think is probably the weakness in this draft. I am going to do another video on the best bench, where I'm going to do a lot more research on the best players to have on your bench. So if you are interested in that, make sure that you're subscribed. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do drop it a like. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.